What have psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, Roman philosopher Seneca, St. Francis of Assisi, and my dear friend Mark all known? Well, it's that acts of kindness and service not only make the world a better place, because they certainly do, but they make us feel better too. So, in this episode, I'm going to put on my psychology hat and we'll unpack how doing good things for other people or animals can help us feel better about ourselves. They're very real effects, but we'll talk about why the things everyday people like you and me do are really the building blocks of important and meaningful and lasting change. We'll talk about why the simple things we do on an everyday basis can be the most powerful forces for positive and lasting change in the world. So if that's of interest to you, stay tuned. You'll also get a promo code for $3 off, either or both, or each rather, of two of my more popular albums, Developing Your Intuition and Manifesting Your Future Self During Deep Sleep. They're on my online store, tracistine.com. That's TRACISTEIN.com. And I will be donating the proceeds from the sales of those two albums through the end of December and splitting them between two charities that I'll mention in the episode. But by the end of this episode, you will again have a better understanding of why you are one of the most important people in the world at making a difference. Even if you don't think you are, you are. And the things we all do, that's what's going to change the world. So stay tuned. So hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Unpacking Possibility. I'm your host, Traci Stein, as always. I'm so happy to be here with you today. I might sound a little froggy because I got up earlier than normal, but I thought I really wanted to record this episode because I think it's one that all of us could benefit from. So let's see what you think. It's also an audio-only episode because, again, I'm sitting here at 6:30 in the morning in my pajamas. I have not had my first full cup of coffee yet, but you can imagine me however you like, hopefully nicely showered and ready to go. But anyway, I wanted to talk about a few things and tie them together to help us feel better by doing good. Now, I've talked about that before, and I know for some people it might sound like, God, I'm so overwhelmed with all this stuff going on in the world. Turn on the news, it's too much, or I've got all this stuff going on in my own life, whatever that is. I mean, I hear you, and I've been feeling that way too. But I want you to know that you are one of the everyday heroes. And I think that is part of why you're here. And I'm not exaggerating that. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. But each one of us, I'm going to say the people who are not necessarily famous, not necessarily unbelievably wealthy, they have the potential to do incredible things, to benefit the world on a large scale. And some people do, and some people don't. But it's the everyday acts, the small things we each do that I think make the world better and in an enduring and meaningful way. And I also think it connects us with our purpose. So I'm going to talk a little bit about those things. If I were to give this episode a title, I would obviously have to make it more concise, and I'm going to make it right now, but it might be Viktor Frankl, Seneca, and you. How meaning and doing good can make us feel good and live our purpose. It's really not a catchy title, so I'll think of something more catchy before I actually upload this. But I want to go over some things that can help us get through difficult times. So this is going to be a particular type of philosophy. I'll just chat with you briefly about that. I want to share some everyday people who make a difference. I want us to all think about how we could do something, and it doesn't need to be this big grand gesture. I'm going to talk about a few of the benefits of altruism, or doing things for others without necessarily expecting a personal benefit. That's true altruism. And then what I'm going to do is put some links in the show notes. It's the first time I think I've done that, but to a few local charities that I feel are really important. It's people who are working so hard to help us get through our lives and make the world better for people, for animals. And then I'm going to also give you a promo code that you can use on my website. It will give you $3 off of either of these two albums or both. And you will know that not only will you get something, literally my albums, but you will be contributing to the greater good, because until the end of December, I'm going to donate the entire net proceeds of those album sales to, I'll split them between two local charities. I'm going to tell you right now what they'll be. One is the Holy Trinity Food Pantry in my community. Lots and lots of people are needing help with food these days. They are having a very hard time keeping up. So your $10 purchase will help somebody have a hot meal. I think that's amazing. Easy thing for you to do, and you can keep the album till the end of time, or you can buy it for somebody else. And the other charity that I will split the proceeds between, Holy Trinity and this other charity, it will be the West Orange TNVR, and it's an organization that helps to trap, neuter, vaccinate, and release or adopt out feral cats in our area. We have a whole lot of them, and they work tirelessly to do that. And you can also just donate to a charity in your area or help a friend, help a neighbor. But we'll talk about what we get out of that. So I mentioned a few people in the beginning, or two people in the beginning, both deceased, one long deceased. One is Viktor Frankl. If you have studied psychology, you may know who that is, but Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist whose entire family was wiped out during the Holocaust. He was imprisoned in a concentration camp. And the long story short is the way he and some of the other people in the camp got through the unimaginable was to find meaning. Also to go into their minds and return to places and memories that really had breathed life into their lives. But the idea of meaning and purpose, that's what's so vital, because it doesn't take much to look, open up any social media app that you like to use, and you will see people who've had all of the success and the financial success, like tremendous things most of us can't even imagine. The things that they thought would make them happy and feel good and feel safe and feel loved, and they still don't. And I'm not saying that you can't be successful or well-known and be quite happy, but I've always thought it was really something. I'm going to say mystifying, but in a way it isn't, that people could have so much and still not be happy. And I think part of that is not connecting to meaning and purpose beyond our own identities and our own egos. And I don't think everybody can do that. As somebody who has been a psychologist for a while now, I can tell you that there are people who could be in therapy for 100 years and, biological reasons aside and life events aside, because there are lots of reasons why people can struggle with mood and happiness, and I don't want to discount those, but I'm thinking back to some of the people who on the surface had so much, and the daily struggles of life weren't the thing for them, but their lens was always focused in on themselves. And that's not something easy to change, right? But if we're only looking at ourselves and we're looking at ourselves through a microscope and we're finding everything that isn't ideal, and we don't remember that we are part of a collective and that the collective is us, I think we just keep searching for something to be stimulating, right? So whether it's taking substances or spending money or making more money or getting more press or whatever it is, or going from beautiful partner to beautiful partner, there's a feeling sometimes of emptiness and and agitation. I'm not really even fully capturing it. And again, please know I'm not trying to be unsympathetic or lack compassion. That is not an easy road to walk either. But one of the things that gives our lives meaning, again, is remembering that our lives are about more than just us. And in fact, there is research to show that people who engage in acts of kindness or altruism, whether it's for other people or animals or for a cause that is meaningful but makes others' lives better, they are happier. There's actually kind of like an altruistic kind of high or endorphin release that we can get from doing something, again, that results in a good outcome. And that is separate from any praise or visibility that we get from doing it. But it also helps us to put our own suffering and our own struggles in perspective. For most people in the United States, I mean, everybody has struggles, and the struggles are not all equal. I've said that a million times, but we may not have to look that hard to find somebody else who is suffering as much or more, right? Maybe we've had a personal loss, whether it's the death of a loved one or the loss of a job or a change in our financial status or social stress, or we hate our job, or, there's a million things that can cause us to suffer. And this is not to discount the things that we all struggle with, illness, right? And the sense of loss that brings. I've worked with so many people who've dealt with that. But when we focus on the things we can do and the help we can give, and the way even small acts might make somebody's day easier, and maybe that benefit extends beyond because they realize that they matter and maybe they were thinking they didn't, that benefits us. It actually can help our self-esteem to be better. And self-esteem is a real challenge for a lot of people, and a lot of people that you would look at and not know. Maybe they look like everything is great. But doing good makes us feel good. And again, it's the everyday stuff that changes the world. So never doubt that your good deed doesn't matter, even if somebody doesn't give you credit. And I've talked before about the small things we can do. If you have an elderly neighbor, somebody who's dealing with an illness, or someone who's lost a job, bringing over a meal, running to the supermarket for somebody. You have a lawnmower and maybe your neighbor is not as able-bodied as they used to be, and you trim their grass. It doesn't have to be earth-shattering. I mean, yes, there are people who will donate a kidney to a stranger, and that is amazing. And I can hardly wrap my mind around the goodness of the person who does that, right? That is not an easy road. But that is not the bar. Most of us are here for enough days and hours in our lives that we can do a lot of things on a smaller scale that make a difference. Babysitting for somebody. I remember when I was a trainee and I did a year on a pediatric oncology unit, seeing inpatients and outpatients. And, I applied to do that. And you don't get paid. And I'm not saying that because I'm a hero. I also had to do something as part of my training. But I remember seeing, people can do good things as part of their professions. The people who come in and they're art therapists and they're working with somebody and bringing a kid who's literally living on a hospital unit for a year or more some joy, that is an act of service, even if it's their job. But I remember there was a children's book author who came and, you don't have to do it every day. I think she came for an hour a week and sat with kids and read, did story time from her books. That's an act of service. Taking that, probably 3 hours out of her day by the time she took the subway to the hospital and got there and read and talked to kids and families and went home. So it doesn't have to be something that's extremely hard for us to do. Most of us can do something well. Again, whether it's baking a loaf of bread or making a hot meal. maybe going and visiting somebody who doesn't get a lot of visitors. You get to decide. Maybe it's allocating $10 out of your weekly paycheck, if you can do it, and donating to, again, like a food pantry or something, or volunteering at a local animal shelter, whatever it is. Maybe it's fostering one pet, because the shelters and rescues are completely overloaded now. A lot of people are surrendering or abandoning or just letting their pets outside because people are really struggling financially. And even though, if you're like me, you might have a lot of feelings about that statement. I do. But this is a time for us to mobilize and say, what can I do? And it can help us feel less overwhelmed by the things that are legitimately overwhelming. So, it's not a history lesson. I'm not a historian, but I mentioned Seneca. Now, if you are a Latin geek like I was, you may know who that was. And I'm not going to give a big lesson on Seneca or Stoicism, but I want to tell you why it's beneficial, what it is at the most basic level. And the idea of Stoicism is pretty much this. So I'm gonna want to find the most simple way of describing it. But basically, I guess Greek and Roman philosophy, but it emphasizes living a, quote, virtuous life. I think it's so appropriate for today, but focusing on what we can control, and there are things that most of us can control, even if it's just our own thoughts, right? Accepting the things that we cannot control, at least in the now, whatever that is. And that's, that's up for debate what that is, but I'm just saying in your own way. And the virtues of Stoicism is about knowing and understanding and recognizing what it is that is under your control, how we judge people, how we judge ourselves, how we assess the world, what we think we really need, our desires and so forth, versus what we don't, what we do, and focusing less on the stuff that's kind of outside of our domain. I'm going to give you an everyday example. It's not even that big an example, but I used to get, when I was younger, so wrapped up in people who didn't do the right thing, and it used to really bother me, and I could feel really judgy about it. People who, I'm not even talking about big stuff, I'm just talking about people who maybe were kind of nasty or self-centered or whatever, or like lied. It still bothers me. But I try to remind myself that I have only a certain amount of mental and physical energy in any one day, and I get to decide how much free rent I am going to give to people who I don't actually want taking up space in my mind, right? Because there are all of these other things that I could be focusing on and thinking about. And I can't change what kind of a person somebody else is, but I can change the amount of interaction I want to have with them, or the type of interaction, and so forth. You get where I'm going with that. But virtues, according to Stoicism, would be courage, being self-disciplined, being just, right, doing the right thing, and cultivating wisdom, like taking your time to learn about things. I'm probably not articulating this as well as somebody who is, a historian or a Stoic philosopher in the modern day, but you get what I'm saying. Because another aspect of Stoicism really is living in the now. What can I do in the now? Right? Because so many of us, all of us, we can really live in the past and become addicted to, all the things people did that they shouldn't do. I'm not saying we shouldn't have feelings about it, but, if it takes you fully out of the now for too long, it actually takes away your power. Seneca was a pretty interesting person, a person who had a lot of challenges in life, challenges with severe health challenges. I'm not going to go into super detail, but also who was exiled for a long time. This is a very bright, thoughtful person who really was, like many people, like most people of the time, subject to life's ups and downs. A lot was not in his control. I find this kind of interesting and relevant for now because Seneca was alive during the reigns of Emperor Nero and Tiberius and Caligula, right? So three Roman emperors. I mean, Caligula, I'm sure most people, even if you don't know a lot about Caligula, horrific person. But, these were not the easiest Roman emperors to be living under. Gross understatement. The reigns of Tiberius and Caligula were reigns of terror, basically. And so it was really important and essential to find ways to cope. So basically, all that is to say, when we are living in times that feel overwhelming, frightening, where things feel overly beyond our control, the two things that can get us through this are looking within and deciding what we want to focus on, who we want to be, and how we want to be, right? How do we want to be the good in the world? And then what that would look like and doing it. So without getting into too much detail about Seneca, the idea is doing good to the extent we can, not spending too much time navel gazing or focusing on us, right? Looking within and seeing what do we think and what do we want to do and what's important to us and living in the now, but also getting out there and doing good, living what we believe is a virtuous life, a just life. And again, the things we do don't have to be gigantic to be meaningful and important and change the world. So I have to take a quick break, but I will be back shortly and we'll talk more about how doing good helps us feel good. So stay tuned. All right, welcome back. So again, it's Deep Early Morning Thoughts by Traci. So, but the thing is, these are ways for us to feel better by doing good. And to me, that's a win-win. So, the examples of, again, Viktor Frankl, Seneca, and you can think of a million other people, I'm sure. The idea is that when we look beyond ourselves, when we remember we're all connected, we can make a difference. And the building blocks of a better world, they're one by one, right? That's how anything gets built. And so while if you are able to do things on a bigger scale, I mean, that's amazing. But don't feel that you are not making a difference if what you are doing is small or, an hour a month or a small donation to a charity that is doing something that means something to you or whatever it is. So let's see. We talked about the benefits of altruism, right? You can feel better. You literally get an endorphin boost. You can feel better about your sense of self. So feel like have a better sense of self-esteem. And who doesn't need that? It's actually one of the things people struggle with the most. And I'm telling you, like my one free track on Insight Timer, I have many free tracks on Insight Timer, but the affirmations for healthy self-esteem, and again, it's free. That's my gift to you. But it's been listened to, I think, over like 260,000 times. And I don't advertise. It's not that easy to find. I don't have a giant following. But it's because people genuinely want to love themselves better and feel better. And what I'm saying is that the secret ingredient is often being loving to other people and remembering that we make a difference. We are here for a reason. And that's actually one of the things I say in those affirmations. So check them out if you're interested. So I wanted to give you a few examples of people that I know. They may remind you of people you know, but who have really made a difference. And it absolutely makes them feel better. And these are just ideas, right? So I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to tell you people's last names necessarily, but I I want to give a shout out to some people that, some people who listen might know, and other people, most people probably won't. But I have neighbors, Franca and Enrico, and I want to tell you about something that they have done. And their charity has really taken years to build. But, Enrico came to the United States probably, I'm going to say like 35 years ago. And Franco's family came here probably even earlier. I'm going to say actually it might be like 50 years ago. But they have the classic immigrant success story. I love this. They came without a ton, especially Enrico. He had to like start from the beginning, just doing whatever job he could get. They started a family business from zero, literally. And when something happened with the business, he had to start over. I'm not giving you a ton of details because the details aren't really what's important. But I'm going to say, they worked their butts off. They worked long days. They were constantly going to jobs and doing work that can be backbreaking. They work extremely hard. And they built the business up to something very successful, very financially successful, and sold it not that long ago. But during their kind of travels, they love to travel. They went to Mexico and decided that they loved it, and they built a house there on property that they bought with friends. And they realized that in rural Mexico, there were a lot of children who were not getting an education, and they started a foundation and a school. And so they help dozens of kids every year to get an education, to get a formal education. And of course, they donate to many other causes as well. It's something that makes them feel good. And you're not going to necessarily read about them in the newspapers. That's not why they're doing it. But, that's giving more as you are able to do so. And then enlisting the help of other people to help out if there's a cause that you know about that you think is worthwhile. On one of my earlier podcast episodes, she might have even been the first interview, I'm going to call her my cousin-in-law, Camille, but she is somebody whose life was kind of derailed for a while in her early 40s by an ovarian cancer diagnosis. And, thank God she survived, but went through grueling treatment. You probably know people like this because I don't think there's any one of us whose lives have not been touched by cancer or a serious illness in some way. But, Camille has done walkathons and otherwise raised money for ovarian cancer research. She's also shared a ton of information, put it out there on social media, et cetera, so that other women will, have a chance at early detection, right? Because usually with ovarian cancer, by the time you find out, it's more advanced. So really working to raise awareness. And, her health is still not 100%. She's doing what she can do and what is meaningful. She's also rescued animals and, just those are the things that I think keep her going. Those, that and her family and so forth. But I've mentioned my friend Mark before, and I'm still processing Mark's passing 2.5 years ago. This was somebody who's one of my closest friends, and just a lively and beautiful, wonderful soul. He loved to entertain, he loved to grill, and he loved to do kind of techie stuff. And I'm not fully capturing all of who Mark was by any means, but he was somebody who could make you laugh. Like no matter what was going on, he could find the humor in something, and he laughed a lot. And that's one of the things I loved most about him. And when Mark was in his early 40s, he was diagnosed with a particularly aggressive form of prostate cancer. So for years, Mark did various types of treatments, aggressive treatments to deal with an aggressive cancer, whether it was, all kinds of imaging, radiation, surgery, various kinds of drug therapies, and he really fought the good fight. And Mark wound up running the New York City Marathon. I can't remember if it was like 5 times, it was like 3 times or 5 times, but even when he was out of breath, his disease had spread to his lungs. I mean, I don't honestly know how he even could have walked the marathon. It's 26.2 miles for those who are not familiar, let alone jogged any of it, but he did. And Mark ran as part of Fred's team for Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York, one of the top cancer hospitals in the world. I was privileged to work there early in my career, but he got so many friends and then friends of friends and then complete strangers to him to run and raise money for cancer research. And to date, I believe Fred's team and Team Mark, people who run in his memory and honor, have raised over $500,000 for cancer research. And my hair's standing up as I tell you that. Now, this is somebody I never would have thought would have jogged a mile, let alone 26.2 of them multiple times and while on treatment. That is a grand kind of gesture, but he was so passionate, and that motivated him to do it. That got him one foot in front of the other, doing something that honestly, I've always said I don't think I could do it. He did it. And lots of other people have done it since, and lots of other people have supported the runners, and you get the idea. You don't have to run a marathon, by the way, though, if that's not something you can do. You don't even have to, you don't have to raise money if that's not something you can do. And again, maybe it's like one coffee a week, which is like $7 now at a lot of coffee shops. You could donate that, and over time it adds up. Again, bringing a meal to somebody who is not well, or you think of something. I'm sure you could think of a million things that I'm not thinking of. The last person I want to mention is somebody locally. Some of you know I live in New Jersey, and I'm very passionate about animals, but her name is Judy Steyer. I hope I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, and if I'm not, Judy, please at me. But I'm mentioning her because she is well into her 70s, and for years she has run and she's founded the West Orange Trap, Neuter, Vaccinate, Release program, West Orange TNVR. We have a ton of stray and feral cats in the area. I'm not sure why, but the number of cats that have been, again, abandoned or surrendered or that just happen to be stray is significant. And Judy works tirelessly. She's got serious arthritis. She's still doing it. And it is not an easy thing to do. It is very emotionally stressful and draining. And right now, shelters and rescue organizations are overwhelmed. But I had a feral cat that I was fostering, and actually now is a very non-feral cat and one of Camille's cats, and she's amazing. But the point is, find out what it is that moves you and makes you feel better being in this world and makes the world a better place. And again, maybe it's doing something on a bigger scale, starting an organization. Maybe it's volunteering 1 hour a month. I don't know what it is. And if you can't do any of that, maybe it's sitting in meditation or prayer, if you pray or if you meditate, and just visualizing a more loving, compassionate, kind, and helpful world. Because I actually do think that matters, and I do think it has an effect, and I think that. But I do believe in energy. I do believe that there is some divine element connecting all of us. And if that's what you can do that. And the last thing I'm going to mention that nobody ever talks about when they talk about altruism, because really altruism, is about helping others. But do something that's being kind to you. Send love to your younger self or to yourself that needed somebody to love them or needed somebody to feel compassionate toward them. I actually do think that has an effect as well. But even if we just stayed with the psychological, so many people have needed those words of reassurance or that kindness, that reminder that they're here for a reason. No one's born without a reason. We're all here for some larger purpose. And even if you don't know what that is yet, that's okay. You don't need to be your ideal version of yourself to be worthy of love and kindness and compassion and self-compassion. And self-compassion practices make us better people. They just do. A free resource, and I'll put it in the show notes as well, Dr. Kristen Neff, who is really the pioneer of self-compassion research. Same with Christopher Germer, Dr. Christopher Germer. But they have free resources, free brief meditations on self-compassion. And of course, on free apps like Insight Timer and others, you can find other self-compassion meditations as well. But it's worth it, and you're worth it. And again, all of those things that we do, the small things, not just the big things, make our lives better, help us feel better, because we're doing better too, but it makes the world better in general. So with that, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being with me. Do check the show notes for charities if you're interested. And again, you can get $3 off of 2 of my audio meditations. One's going to be manifesting during deep sleep. It does help you sleep, and you can fall asleep not only more deeply, but hopefully stay asleep until you wake up. But it will seed your beautiful subconscious with hope and possibility, and remind you that there's a lot you can do to be more of the person you want to be and live more of the life you want to live. And also my Developing Your Intuition album, same thing. I'll give you $3 off of that. And the proceeds, the net proceeds of both of those albums will go to the 2 charities I mentioned, the Holy Trinity Food Pantry and the West Orange TNVR. Any purchases of those 2 albums through the end of December 2025. So if you're interested, check them out. And as always, again, thank you for joining me. Until next time, be well.